Case 1. Jessica Marie Mauthe. On the morning of September 13th, 2025, the quiet in Cadogan Township was broken by the sound of a landlord's retching sobs. Brent Flanagan had entered 139 Oak Avenue that day with a checklist and a mop, eager to clean up after an eviction. The 39-year-old tenant, Jessica Marie Mauthe, had fallen months behind on rent. Flanagan had tried to work with her, extended deadlines, payment plans, second chances. But eventually the law took its course. She was evicted. The house was his again. He expected mess, maybe some forgotten furniture, trash left behind, the usual detritus of a life unraveling. What he found instead was horror. Behind a bedroom closet door, sealed inside a black trash bag wrapped in towels, lay the decomposing remains of what looked like a newborn. The stench hit him first, thick, cloying, unmistakable. The smell of death that clings to the drywall, seeps into the floorboards, and never quite leaves. Flanagan stumbled outside, gasping for air, and called 911. When officers from the Pennsylvania State Police arrived, they cordoned off the house and began a methodical search. Room by room, closet by closet, and that's when the scope of it hit them. In the attic, hidden inside plastic storage totes stacked neatly against the wall, they uncovered 3 more infant bodies. 4 babies, all concealed, all dead. The Indiana County coroner was called in. The autopsies took days, and when the results came back, they confirmed the unthinkable. The babies had been born alive. According to affidavits obtained by USA Today and CBS Pittsburgh, Mauthe admitted to police that she had birthed each infant alone at home, one as recently as a year ago, another roughly 6 years earlier. She told investigators she never sought prenatal care, never told anyone she was pregnant, never asked for help. In one chilling account, she told troopers she held the newborn against her until it stopped making noises. The rest she hid in the attic, wrapping them in towels and sealing them away like they'd never existed, like they were secrets she could bury and forget. But secrets like that don't stay buried forever. Mauthe was charged with criminal homicide, involuntary manslaughter, and multiple counts of abuse of a corpse and concealment of the death of a child. She's being held in the Armstrong County jail without bail, awaiting trial. If convicted, she faces life in prison. For neighbors, the revelations shattered normalcy. One told WTEE Pittsburgh, "She was quiet, polite, nothing strange. You think you know people, but you really don't." Another neighbor recalled seeing Mauthe occasionally at the local gas station, always alone, always in a hurry. "She kept to herself," they said, "but I never thought, how could you?" Psychologists call this concealed childbirth, a condition where denial, shame, and untreated trauma prevent a woman from acknowledging her pregnancy until it ends. Some women hide it so deeply they convince themselves it isn't happening. The mind creates a wall, a barrier between reality and survival. And when labor comes, panic takes over. Dr. Margaret Spinelli, a forensic psychiatrist who has studied neonaticide extensively, explains that women who conceal pregnancies often experience dissociative states. They're not in touch with reality in the way we understand it, she says. The pregnancy becomes something separate, something they can't integrate into their sense of self. But whether caused by illness or intent, prosecutors say the law demands one truth: each infant had a right to live. Cadogan Township, population under 400, now carries a name forever tied to an unthinkable silence. 4 infants, 4 hidden births, 4 unanswered cries. The house on Oak Avenue sits empty now. No one wants to buy it. No one wants to live where those babies died. It's become a monument to something the town can't quite name. A reminder that horror doesn't always announce itself with screams. Sometimes it hides in silence, and Jessica Mauthe wasn't alone. Just a week earlier, 200 miles south, another child's body was found, in a very different kind of hiding place. Case 2, Courtney Melinda Yutsi, September 3rd, 2025. Fayette County. Police received a frantic call about a missing child, 9-year-old Renesmee Yutsi. Her foster mother, Courtney Melinda Yutsi, told officers the girl had wandered off into the wooded hills near Smithfield Township. It was after midnight. The temperature was dropping. Dozens joined the search. Volunteers with flashlights, neighbors calling her name into the dark, police dogs sniffing through underbrush. Hope hung in the cold air. Maybe she was just lost, scared, waiting to be found. Search teams combed the woods for hours. Flashlight beams cut through the darkness. Voices echoed off the trees. Renesmee, can you hear us? Renesmee! Less than 12 hours later, as dawn touched the Ushagini River, a volunteer found a black plastic bag caught among the reeds. Inside lay Renesmee's body. The coroner's report was unbearable. Bruises old and new, burns across her skin, and signs of long-term malnutrition. Her small frame bore the evidence of sustained abuse. Injuries in various stages of healing, suggesting weeks, maybe months, of violence. Her 3 siblings, removed from Yutsi's care that same day, bore similar signs of neglect and abuse. One child had cigarette burns on their arms. Another was severely underweight. All 3 were terrified, withdrawn, unable to make eye contact. According to police affidavits, one surviving child told investigators, "I heard her screaming, then it went quiet." When questioned, Yutsi gave shifting stories. First a sudden sickness, then a panic attack, then confusion. She claimed Renesmee had fallen, that she'd had a seizure, that she didn't know what happened. But confronted with evidence, the bruises, the timeline, the testimony of the other children, she finally admitted the truth. She feared that if she took Renesmee to a hospital, staff would notice the bruises and alert authorities. Rather than seek help, she disposed of the body herself, wrapped her in plastic, drove to the river, and let the current take her. Prosecutors charged her with criminal homicide, aggravated assault, abuse of a corpse, and endangering the welfare of children. She remains jailed without bail. To the community, it was more than a crime. It was a betrayal of trust. A foster parent, certified by the state, approved to care for vulnerable children, had turned predator under the system's own nose. Lawmakers demanded accountability from Pennsylvania's overwhelmed child welfare agencies. How had this woman been approved? How many home visits were missed? How many warning signs ignored? Records show that Yutsi had been a licensed foster parent for 3 years. She'd passed background checks, completed training, had regular visits from caseworkers. On paper, everything looked fine. But the reality behind closed doors was a nightmare. Child welfare experts point to systemic failures, overworked caseworkers carrying impossible caseloads, insufficient training, lack of follow-up, and a culture that prioritizes keeping families together over child safety. We're asking caseworkers to do the impossible, says Dr. Richard Gels, a professor of social policy at the University of Pennsylvania. They're managing 30, 40, sometimes 50 cases at once. They can't possibly see everything. And when they miss something, children die. Psychologists labeled the Yutsi case displacement abuse, when prolonged stress or resentment turns a caregiver's frustration into violence toward a dependent child. Yutsi had financial problems, relationship issues, mental health struggles she never addressed, and the children in her care became outlets for her rage. And yet, as one expert testified, explanation never equals justification. At Renesmee's vigil, children released pink balloons beside hand-drawn signs reading "No More Forgotten Children." Her foster home had been approved to heal trauma. Instead, it became where trauma ended a life. A small memorial now stands near the river where her body was found. Flowers, stuffed animals, handwritten notes. One reads, "You deserved love, you deserved safety, we failed you." Real quick, what time is it where you are right now? I'm curious how many of you are watching this late at night. Let me know in the comments. If Yutsi's case exposed cracks in the foster system, the next case revealed something even more insidious, when a mother believes death is mercy. Case 3. Ruth Durenzo Whitehead. The violence in Horsham Township, Montgomery County was quieter, but no less devastating. On the night of April 10, 2023, 11-year-old Matthew Whitehead went to bed beside his mother, Ruth Durenzo Whitehead, never realizing he would never wake up. Matthew was a bright kid, curious, the kind of boy who asked a million questions and actually listened to the answers. He loved science, especially astronomy. His room was covered in glow-in-the-dark stars. He wanted to be an astronaut. That night, he climbed into bed beside his mother like he'd done 100 times before. She read to him, kissed his forehead, told him she loved him, and then she killed him. By morning, his father burst through the locked bedroom door to find Matthew lifeless. A belt nearby, his mother and SUV gone. Police issued an alert. Hours later, officers found the SUV half submerged on a Cape May, New Jersey beach. Ruth was discovered wandering nearby, disoriented but alive. She'd driven hours through the night trying to disappear, trying to escape what she'd done. She confessed immediately, overwhelmed by financial stress, terrified of failure. She claimed she wanted to save Matthew from future pain. In her mind, the world was too cruel. He'd suffer, he'd struggle, he'd be disappointed. So she ended it, strangled him while he slept, then fled. Prosecutors called it altruistic filicide, a perverse reimagining of love as mercy. The belief that killing someone you love spares them inevitable suffering. But digital evidence revealed this wasn't a sudden snap. Weeks before the killing, Ruth had Googled, "How long does strangulation take?" She'd researched methods, timelines. She'd planned it. Psychologists explained that in such cases, despair replaces reason. Reality distorts until death feels like salvation. Dr. Philip Resnick, a leading expert on filicide, describes it as a warped altruism. The parent genuinely believes they're acting out of love. They see the world as unbearably painful, he explains, and they can't imagine their child surviving it, so they kill them to protect them. But intent doesn't absolve responsibility. A jury found Ruth guilty of first-degree murder. In 2024, she was sentenced to life without parole. During the trial, Matthew's father testified. He spoke about the boy's dreams, his laughter, his endless curiosity. "She didn't save him from pain," he said, his voice breaking. "She stole his future. She stole everything." Matthew's classmates remembered him as bright, curious, and kind. Every April now, blue balloons rise in his memory, a reminder that untreated mental illness is silent, but its eruptions are loud enough to shatter families forever. Ruth's defense team argued she'd been suffering from severe depression, untreated and undiagnosed. She'd lost her job. Her marriage was crumbling. She felt like a failure. And in her distorted thinking, killing Matthew became an act of love. But the prosecution countered. She had options: therapy, medication, family support. She chose murder instead. The case sparked conversations about maternal mental health, the stigma around asking for help, and the dangerous intersection of depression and delusion. Ruth wasn't the only mother who convinced herself death was kindness. But Case 4? That one still haunts investigators. Before dawn on September 23, 2019, first responders walked into a basement and froze. Case 4 mice Lisa Snyder. 2 children, Connor Snyder, 8, and his little sister Brinley, 4, hung side by side from a dog leash tied to a basement beam. Their mother, Lisa Snyder, stood nearby, blank-faced, claiming Connor had taken his own life and that Brinley had followed him. It was a story that might have made sense if the details hadn't unraveled so quickly. First responders arrived at the Albany Township home in Berks County just after 4:30 a.m. The 911 call had been chilling in its calmness. Lisa's voice flat and emotionless, saying her children had hanged themselves. When paramedics entered the basement, they found the children still hanging. Connor and Brinley, side by side, suspended from a dog leash looped over a support beam. They were rushed to the hospital. Both were placed on life support, but the damage was too severe. 3 days later, they were pronounced dead. The story Snyder told was that Connor had been bullied at school, that he was depressed, that he'd decided to end his life, and his little sister, not understanding, had tried to copy him. It was a story that might have made sense if the details hadn't unraveled so quickly. The beam was too high. An 8-year-old couldn't have reached it without a ladder or chair, and there was none nearby. The knots were too complex for a child, and the story Snyder told was too rehearsed, too clean, too convenient. Investigators seized her phone. What they found was damning. Searches from days before. How long does it take to die by hanging? Does a weight bench hold body weight? Can an 8-year-old commit suicide? She'd researched it, planned it, prepared for it. Friends recalled Snyder saying she was done being a single mom. Financial records showed mounting debt, eviction notices piling up. She was drowning, and in her mind, the only way out was to take her children with her. Prosecutors built an airtight case of premeditation and manipulation, a staged double homicide disguised as a suicide pact. The evidence was overwhelming. Forensic experts testified that the children couldn't have hanged themselves. The positioning was wrong. The physics didn't work. And the timeline Snyder gave didn't match the medical evidence. Neighbors testified that they'd heard nothing unusual that night. No screaming, no struggle, just silence. One neighbor recalled seeing Lisa the day before. She seemed fine, they said. Normal. Maybe a little tired, but nothing that would make you think. 5 years later, in 2024, Snyder pleaded guilty to avoid the death penalty. She received 2 life sentences without parole. The judge's words echoed what Berks County still feels. You robbed them of their futures and blamed your son to hide your cowardice. During sentencing, the judge read victim impact statements from family members. Connor's grandmother spoke about his love of Legos, his infectious laugh. Brinley's aunt described her as a little ray of sunshine who loved princesses and singing. They trusted you, the judge said to Snyder. They loved you, and you murdered them in cold blood. Connor and Brinley's playground has become a memorial garden now, a symbol that even in ordinary homes, despair can breed cruelty when no one intervenes. The playground sits on the edge of town, a small patch of green with swings and slides. A plaque reads, "In memory of Connor and Brinley, may their light never fade." I need to know, are you watching this alone or with someone? Sometimes these stories hit different depending on who's in the room. Let me know. Not every case involved violence. Some mothers killed through something quieter, neglect. I know these stories are heavy, but they matter. They expose the fractures in systems, the cost of silence, and the warnings we ignore. If this video is making you think, hit that like button. It helps more people see these stories and hopefully prevents the next one. We're halfway through. And trust me, the next 5 cases get even more complicated. Because not every mother who kills does it with violence. Some do it through neglect, through apathy, through choices that seem small in the moment but end in tragedy. Let's talk about a death that seemed like an accident until investigators looked closer. Case 5, Shy Richardson. On October 27, 2020, in Dauphin County, paramedics raced to a call from a distraught mother saying her baby wasn't breathing. They found the infant beside Shy Richardson, barely a few months old, lifeless in a co-sleeping bed. Initially, it was believed to be a tragic accident, a case of sudden infant death syndrome, SIDS. The kind of nightmare every parent fears. The kind of thing that happens without warning, without explanation. But then investigators reviewed records from Child and Youth Services, and the picture changed. Richardson had been repeatedly warned about co-sleeping while intoxicated. She'd been documented with open bottles in the room, previous near deaths, and training materials about safe sleep practices. Social workers had visited. They'd explained the risks. They'd handed her brochures with pictures and diagrams showing safe sleep positions. One caseworker's notes read, "Mother acknowledges risks, but states she sleeps better with baby in bed. Provided education on bassinet use, we'll follow up." But the follow-up never came. The caseload was too heavy, the system too stretched. That night, her blood alcohol level was well above the legal limit. She'd been drinking heavily before bed. The baby, just 3 months old, had been placed beside her in the bed, a bed cluttered with pillows, blankets, and stuffed animals. All suffocation hazards. The autopsy revealed the baby had died of positional asphyxiation, unable to breathe, trapped between Richardson's body and the mattress. Prosecutors charged her with involuntary manslaughter, reckless endangerment, and child neglect. In court, Richardson wept, saying she just wanted to be close to him. Her defense attorney argued she was a grieving mother, not a criminal, that she'd made a mistake, not a choice. But the judge reminded her, "You were warned and you still chose risk." "This wasn't an accident," the judge said. "This was a preventable death. You were given information. You were given resources. You chose to ignore them." She received 3 to 6 years in state prison. Public campaigns that followed used her case to teach new parents about safe sleep and intoxication hazards. Hospitals began distributing bassinets to low-income families. Social workers received additional training on recognizing high-risk situations. The unnamed infant's death rippled outward, a tragedy transformed belatedly into prevention. But for Richardson, the guilt is a life sentence. In a jailhouse interview, she said, "I think about him every day, every single day. I'd give anything to go back." Shy Richardson's intoxication killed her baby. But in Lancaster County, a mother's addiction left her child to bake alive in a car. Case 6, Emily Weaver, August 17, 2023. Lancaster County's summer heat was relentless. By 2 p.m., the pavement shimmered, the air thick and suffocating. Temperatures had climbed into the mid-90s, with humidity making it feel even hotter. Emergency callers reported a baby alone in a parked car on Old Pike. Police shattered the window of a vehicle where interior temperatures exceeded 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Inside was a 3-month-old girl, unresponsive, her skin red and burning. Her tiny body was drenched in sweat. Her lips were cracked. She wasn't breathing. Paramedics performed CPR on the scene, desperately trying to revive her. But it was too late. She was pronounced dead at the hospital less than an hour later. Her mother, Emily Weaver, 27, was found inside a nearby apartment, high on methamphetamine, unconscious to everything but her addiction. Drug paraphernalia was scattered across the coffee table. She was barely coherent when police woke her. Timeline reconstruction showed Weaver had left her daughter in that car for nearly 3 hours, having gone inside to use drugs with friends. Witnesses later recalled hearing faint crying that faded into silence. One neighbor said, "I heard a baby crying around noon. I thought about checking, but I figured the mom was nearby. I didn't think. I should have checked." The autopsy revealed hyperthermia, death by overheating, a slow, agonizing death. The medical examiner testified that the baby would have been conscious for much of it, suffering as her body temperature climbed, her organs began to fail. Weaver was charged with third-degree murder, involuntary manslaughter, and child endangerment, facing up to 40 years. Experts cite her case as a devastating example of addiction-driven neglect, not malice, but cognitive decay caused by methamphetamine. The drug rewires the brain, erasing judgment, empathy, and even basic parental instinct. Dr. Carl Hart, a neuroscientist who studies addiction, explains, methamphetamine hijacks the brain's reward system. It becomes the only thing that matters. Everything else, including your own child, fades into the background. Yet, as prosecutors stated, addiction may explain, but never excuse. She made a choice, the district attorney said. She chose drugs over her daughter, and that choice killed her. Community vigils near the parking lot placed a small cross and plush giraffe beneath a sign, "In loving memory." For many, that straw-colored toy became a symbol of how drug collapse devours not just users, but the innocent they love. The case sparked renewed calls for addiction treatment programs, harm reduction strategies, and better support for parents struggling with substance abuse. But for the baby's father, who'd been trying to gain custody, it was too little, too late. "I begged them to take her away," he said. "I told them Emily was using. I told them she wasn't safe. And they did nothing." Emily Weaver's daughter died in 2023, but the next case? It took 16 years to solve. In December 2007, sanitation workers found a plastic bag in a frozen field. Case 7, Tara Brazel, Baby Mary Ann. For nearly 2 decades, one of Lancaster County's saddest mysteries went unsolved. On a cold December morning in 2007, sanitation workers found a plastic bag in a rural field off White Oak Road, Penn Township. Inside was a newborn girl, umbilical cord still attached, her tiny body frozen solid. Police gave her a name, Baby Mary Ann. The autopsy confirmed she had been born alive. Her lungs had filled with air, meaning she took breaths. She lived, however briefly, before freezing to death alone in that field. Investigators estimated she'd been left there within hours of birth. The cold had preserved her body, but it had also stolen any chance of survival. Temperatures that night had dropped below freezing. No one came forward. Investigators canvassed neighborhoods, checked hospital records, interviewed dozens of women. They distributed flyers, held press conferences, pleaded for information. Nothing. The case went cold. But police stored her DNA and vowed never to forget her. Every year on the anniversary of her discovery, detectives would visit her grave, lay flowers, and renew their promise. We will find out who you are. Then in 2023, forensic genealogy cracked the case. Specialists at Parabon Nanolabs, working with the Lancaster County coroner, used advanced DNA analysis and genealogical databases to build a family tree. They traced the infant's DNA through distant relatives, narrowing down potential matches. After months of painstaking work, they identified a match, Tara Brazel, 44, of Ephrata. When confronted, Brazel confessed. According to court records, she delivered the baby alone in her bathroom in 2007, panicked, and left her outside in the winter air to die. She was 28 at the time, unmarried, working a low-wage job. She'd hidden the pregnancy from everyone, family, friends, co-workers. She wore baggy clothes, avoided social situations, convinced herself it wasn't real. I didn't know what to do, she told investigators. I was scared. I thought if I just left her, it would be like it never happened. She pleaded guilty to third-degree murder and abuse of a corpse, sentenced to 9 to 20 years in prison. At long last, detectives stood at baby Mary Ann's grave with flowers. The coroner said, "It felt like hearing her cry for the first time. We finally knew who she belonged to." Pennsylvania's safe haven law, enacted in 2002, could have saved her. It allows parents to surrender newborns at hospitals, fire stations, or police stations. No questions asked, no penalties. But fear spoke louder than reason. She could have walked into any hospital, the district attorney said. She could have left the baby at a fire station. No one would have arrested her. No one would have judged her. But she chose to leave her in a field to freeze to death. Mary Ann's resting place now carries a small plaque. Loved, remembered, and known. The case has become a teaching tool for law enforcement agencies across the country. Forensic genealogy, the same technology that caught the Golden State Killer, is now being used to solve cold cases involving unidentified victims. This is the future of cold case investigation, says C.C. Moore, the genetic genealogist who worked on the case. We can finally give names to the nameless. We can finally bring justice to the forgotten. This case was solved because of forensic genealogy. Do you think that technology should be used more in cold cases? Comment yes or no. I want to hear your thoughts. Mary Ann's death was hidden for nearly 2 decades. But in Bucks County, another mother's plan unfolded in a single, violent night. Case 8, Trinwan. In the early hours of May 2, 2022, police responding to reports of gunfire at a Timber Ridge Road townhouse in Bucks County found 2 sleeping boys, Jeffrey, 13, and Nelson, 9, shot through the head. Their mother, Trinwan, 38, had fled. The scene was eerily calm. No signs of struggle, no forced entry. Just 2 boys in their beds tucked under blankets, each with a single gunshot wound to the head. Hours later, officers found Nwan in a church parking lot, clutching a revolver and a handwritten letter. She had tried to take her own life. The gun jammed. The letter was rambling, disjointed, filled with apologies and justifications. She wrote about feeling like a failure, about losing everything, about wanting to free her sons from the pain she knew was coming. Investigations revealed she'd faced eviction, unemployment, and the collapse of a relationship with her landlord, who was also her ex-partner's father. Financial pressure had crushed her. Bills piled up, calls from creditors, threats of legal action. In her mind, death was peace for her sons. District Attorney Matt Weintraub called it cold-blooded execution disguised as compassion. She didn't kill them to spare them suffering, Joey said. She killed them because she couldn't face her own failure. She killed them because it was easier than asking for help. In court, she wept, saying she wanted to end their suffering and hers. But prosecutors argued her sons weren't suffering. She was. And rather than seek help, she chose murder. Jeffrey's teacher testified about his love of robotics, his dream of becoming an engineer. Nelson's soccer coach described him as the team's class clown, always making everyone laugh. They had futures, the coach said, choking up. They had dreams, and she stole all of it. She pleaded guilty in 2023 to avoid the death penalty, 2 life sentences without parole. At a Bucks County vigil, children's artwork bore smiling faces of the brothers. Jeffrey was the engineer, Nelson the joker. Their organs saved other children, lives exchanged for lessons that came too late. One recipient, a 12-year-old girl who received Jeffrey's kidney, wrote a letter that was read at the vigil. "I don't know why you had to die, but because of you, I get to live. I promise I'll make it count." Clinicians labeled Nguyen's mindset altruistic filicide, echoing Ruth Whitehead's case. Despair twisted into delusion. Each act began where isolation met hopelessness, a reminder that intervention must find people before they break. Trin Nguyen killed quickly, but some mothers let their children die slowly. Case 9. Angela Dawn Moyer and Russell Moore. Few crimes are harder to comprehend than letting a child die slowly. In East Pennsboro Township, August 2021, paramedics found a 10-year-old girl dead in her bed, her body swollen from extreme, untreated constipation. Her mother, Angela Dawn Moyer, and boyfriend Russell Moore, claimed she had been sick for a while. The autopsy revealed pulmonary emboli from idiopathic megacolon, an agonizing condition, fully treatable with routine medical care. She hadn't seen a doctor in 7 years. The medical examiner testified that the girl would have been in excruciating pain for weeks, possibly months. Her abdomen would have been distended. She would have been unable to eat, unable to move without pain. This was not a sudden death, the examiner said. This was a slow, preventable death that should never have happened. The couple had refused repeated recommendations to seek medical help. They'd been warned. They'd been offered resources. Neighbors had noticed the girl looked sick. Teachers had sent notes home. A school nurse had called. They did nothing. Prosecutors charged both with criminal homicide and child endangerment in 2024, 3 years later, when investigators reconstructed the long pattern of neglect. Cumberland County DA Sean McCormick called it lethal indifference, not what they did, but what they refused to do. They watched her suffer, he said. They watched her die, and they did nothing. Experts labeled it passive filicide through omission, where apathy kills as surely as violence. Dr. Vincent Pelusi, a pediatrician who specializes in child abuse, testified that the girl's condition was 100% treatable. A single doctor's visit could have saved her life, he said. A single phone call to 911 could have saved her life, but they chose to do nothing. The girl's name remains sealed. Her story, though, now appears in medical ethics training as a cautionary case reminding every caregiver. Doing nothing can be the deadliest act of all. And then there's the case that still haunts Allentown, the baby hidden in a paint can. Case 10, Ashley Caraballo. In May 2019, police in Allentown, Lehigh County, received a soft, almost reluctant 911 call about an infant death on Turner Street. Officers arrived to find a sealed paint can in a closet. Inside, they discovered the body of a full-term newborn girl wrapped in a trash bag. Her 21-year-old mother, Ashley Caraballo, insisted it was a miscarriage. Yet, according to autopsy findings, the baby had taken several breaths. She was born alive and healthy. Digital evidence showed Ashley had Googled how to hide a pregnancy and how long can a baby live without air. She confessed to birthing alone in her bathroom, panicking, believing the baby was dead. Instead of seeking help under Pennsylvania's safe haven law, she sealed her in the can and hid her away. Ashley was young, scared, living with her parents, who had no idea she was pregnant. She'd hidden it for 9 months, baggy clothes, avoiding family gathering, making excuses. When labor started, she locked herself in the bathroom. She gave birth alone, terrified, convinced her life was over. "I thought she was dead," Ashley told investigators. "She wasn't crying. She wasn't moving. I thought it was over." But the autopsy proved otherwise. The baby had breathed. She'd been alive. And Ashley had sealed her in a paint can and hidden her in a closet. Charged with third-degree murder and abuse of a corpse, Caraballo pleaded guilty in 2020 to avoid life imprisonment, receiving 15 to 30 years. During sentencing, the judge told her, Fear is understandable. Hiding a baby in paint is not. You had options, the judge said. You could have called 911. You could have gone to a hospital. You could have used the safe haven law. But you chose to hide her. You chose to let her die. Outside the courthouse, women's advocacy groups laid a pink blanket and a note reading, "She mattered." The case now anchors maternal mental health outreach in Lehigh County, proof that fear and secrecy remain among the most dangerous forces in parenthood. 10 cases, 10 mothers, 10 children who deserved better. These aren't just horror stories. They're warnings about systems that fail, communities that look away, and silence that kills. If you think someone needs to hear this, share it. These conversations save lives. And if you've made it this far, comment "Justice for the Forgotten." Let's remember them. So what's the thread? What ties all 10 of these cases together? Taken together, these 10 cases trace the anatomy of modern tragedy across Pennsylvania. Not the monstrous, but the mundane. Evictions, addiction, postpartum collapse, broken foster systems, untreated depression, human cracks where the worst slips through unseen. Psychologists call these acts filicide, but investigators, clergy, and neighbors simply call them unthinkable. Yet they keep happening, quietly, cyclically. The thread binding them isn't cruelty alone. It's silence. The fear of judgment, the denial of help. The system stretched too thin to notice a warning sign. Each courtroom now holds echoes of the same questions. Why didn't anyone ask? Why didn't anyone notice? Could empathy, one conversation, one home visit, one hospital screening, have rewritten the ending? From Cadogan's hidden attic to Lancaster's sun-baked car seat, from Lehigh's paint can to Montgomery's locked bedroom, the answer repeats: isolation kills. These stories are not just about mothers who lost their humanity. They're about the communities that didn't see the fractures forming, the neighbors who heard something strange but said nothing, the social workers with impossible caseloads, the mental health systems with no beds, no funding, no follow-through. Pennsylvania's safe haven law exists for a reason. It allows parents to surrender newborns, no names, no penalties, no judgment. But it only works if people know it exists. And it only saves lives if fear doesn't drown out hope. Dr. Deborah Cernio Jensen, a pediatrician and child abuse expert, says, "We need to create a culture where asking for help isn't seen as failure, where struggling parents can reach out without fear of judgment or legal consequences." Community organizations across Pennsylvania are now working to spread awareness. Billboards advertise the safe haven law. Hospitals train staff to recognize signs of postpartum depression and concealed pregnancy. Schools educate teens about resources. But awareness alone isn't enough. We need systemic change, more funding for child welfare agencies, lower caseloads for social workers, better mental health services, affordable childcare, housing assistance. As candles flicker at vigils across the state, one truth rises clearer than any verdict. Awareness saves lives, but silence can kill just as surely as violence. These 10 children deserve better. And the next child teetering on the edge of tragedy deserves for us to notice. If you made it to the end, thank you. I know this one was heavy. If you're not subscribed yet, now's the time. Hit that button. We're covering more cases like this every week. Stories that challenge us, make us think, and remind us why awareness matters. What's the weather like where you are? I want to know you're out there, processing this with me. Drop it in the comments. Next week, we're diving into a case that's been buried for decades, and the forensic breakthrough that finally brought justice. You won't want to miss it. And if you need someone to talk to after this, reach out. This community is here. We're not just true crime fans. We're people who care about making sure these stories lead to change. If you or someone you know is struggling with thoughts of harming yourself or a child, please reach out. National Suicide Prevention. Lifeline 988. Child Help National Child Abuse. Hotline 1-800-422-4453. Pennsylvania Safe Haven. Information 1-866-921-SAFE. These numbers save lives. Don't let silence win. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, and remember, silence is never the answer.